So good evening, all. We have just returned from executive session to discuss issues under purpose number 3, which is related to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body for Medfield Teachers Association Unit A and B, and to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for non-union personnel contract negotiations. And that would be for the superintendent. So now I will call to order this 3/24/2022 regular session of the Medfield School Committee, beginning with a roll call. I think we can all hear that Leo is coming in remote tonight, but I will start with a roll call. To my right.
Tim Knight, right?
And
Megan Glenn here. Anna Mae O'Shea Brooke here.
And Leo. Leo.
Hello. Hola. Dude. Zoomed in to say that and dear.
Leo.
Is he maybe muted?
It was usually.
Did Owen mute it?
Leo Brem here.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So then we just want to tell you that this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the Medfield TV YouTube channel. So citizens at this time may address the committee on items of school business not on this evening's agenda. The committee will take such items under advisement without action or discussion at this time at the meeting at which the item is presented. All comments will be taken in person and limited to 3 minutes. So please state your name and address for the public record if you decide to come up to the podium. Chris, will you be coming up? No? Okay. So,
Wow.
and I'm actually singling anybody out in particular. It's just we have one audience member tonight, so in-house. So the next item on the agenda is to approve and retain the executive session minutes for February 10th, 2022, February 24th, 2022, and March 10th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Tim.
Tim, so moved. Do I have a second?
Second, Megan.
Second, Megan, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right, the motion passes unanimously. Now, the second motion is to approve the regular meeting minutes for February 10th, 2022, and March 10th, 2022. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right, you're a little late on the uptake. Second?
Second.
All right, Leo, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And the motion passes unanimously. Okay, the first item under new business tonight is the DECA International Finals trip. Jeff, do you want to talk to us about that?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So in your materials, you had a letter from Robert Farga asking for your approval. This is a pretty exciting opportunity for our kids. So DECA is a program that we started a couple of years ago, which looks at entrepreneurialism and leadership in business. Mrs. Schaefer has done a phenomenal job with this program. And there's actually 170,000 students in the country that participate in DECA, and 3,200 schools nationwide participate in DECA. And we've had students now chosen to go to the national finals in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's a really awesome opportunity for our kids, and hoping that you will approve this trip as it's written in the materials.
Do I hear a motion to approve this trip?
So moved.
Yeah, I will say I will put a personal note on this. I personally am a judge on DECA and participate here locally in Massachusetts, and it's a wonderful program. And if I'm late for the second, I'm sorry about that, but I will second this motion.
Great. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Leo?
Aye.
So there's a little bit of a lag. And
Sorry about that.
that's fine. So the motion passes unanimously. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Mrs. Schaefer, or if any of the DECA kids are watching, please best of luck, and thank you so much for bringing this opportunity
This is
to them.
great.
This is
Great.
absolutely. I
Great
happen to-
program.
Every kid and every parent that I have spoken to who have had Mrs. Schaefer speak about her in just the most glowing terms around her positivity and just accepting every kid exactly where they are and bringing them along. So if I can just say that right now, I would very
That's
much
an
like to.
outstanding job. Outstanding.
So the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's contract. And what I'd like to do is just kind of talk about how we approached this discussion and what we'll be doing tonight. And then some of my reasons for approaching this discussion and making the decision that I've made about an extension of the contract. And then I will poll the rest of the committee, take public comment, and then we will bring it to a vote. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yes.
Thanks, Leo. So the first thing I would like to say as we approach this discussion is that being a superintendent is one of those jobs that does not end at any point during the span of time that you hold the job. The life of a town and its children never fully shuts down, and so neither does yours. Vacations, evenings, weekends, sometimes even family leave, nothing is sacred. And particularly not if you are Jeff Marston. I know what being a school committee member and a chair has been like during the pandemic, but I honestly think I understand about a fourth of the amount of work that Jeff and his team did during the pandemic. He wasn't just on call. There were months in which he and his team were working 60 to 80-hour weeks without days off, under the same circumstances that all of us were trying to manage, without active guidance or even a guarantee of funding to get our students and families connected and into school, on top of maintaining progress on a new school, which under ordinary circumstances could be a full-time job on top of the usual job. In January, as things started to settle down and with the prospect of a new elementary school project on the horizon and other major curriculum and instructional projects that the committee and the district would like to see come to fruition, the committee agreed to begin a conversation with Dr. Marston about his future goals within Medfield. School committees and superintendents recognize the importance of looking not only at immediate or short-term needs, but also at the long term and the time it can take to get initiatives fully launched. Stability and recognized relationships and influence at the state level are becoming increasingly difficult to find. At 16 years of experience as a superintendent and the leadership positions that come with that length of experience, Dr. Marston's relationships, in my opinion, have allowed our small district to be heard with outsized influence. When Representative Auchincloss came to his district to show where federal grant monies were being used in innovative ways to keep students in school in Massachusetts and across the country, he came to Medfield. In addition, this September, 50 districts across the state opened for school with superintendents who either did not have experience in that position or were new to that district. And several like districts around us have experienced failed superintendent searches. It is long, it is expensive, and it is not something that we need to do. We have the privilege of having an experienced, knowledgeable superintendent with us here. It is for those reasons that I personally will vote to extend Dr. Marston's contract. Now, I know that we all understand what we have negotiated together. Leo Graham and I were elected to negotiate the contract with Dr. Marston, and then we bring it back within executive sessions. But essentially, it is the same contract with the same terms for an extension of 3 years so that his contract would run until 2027. And within that, the only specific change is that we will include a longevity bonus starting at year 10. That aligns specifically with our teacher's contract, and the increases align with the contracts that we have in place right now and have not gone up. I think it is a fair contract. I think it is a contract that is extremely considerate of the financial position that Medfield is in. And I think it is actually, in the amount of work that I have done looking at comparative contracts, it is the most clear in terms of compensation that I have seen across multiple districts. And
I wholeheartedly agree.
pardon, Leo?
I agree, 100%.
Great, thank you. So Tim, Megan, Anna Mae, please weigh in on what your thoughts are around the contract. Anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, I thought your statement was beautifully done, Jess. This has been a rough few years which is an understatement. And I believe that Jeff has risen to the occasion and then some. I mean, we all know that it's just exhausting thinking about it. But and the school building project was another added stressor. It was very exciting to hope for it, but then it was hard when that was defeated. And for me personally, knowing that Jeff wants to stay and wants to
complete
extend
a
his
true
contract,
true.
in my
Yeah.
opinion, hallelujah. I'm so grateful because I was on the search committee. I wasn't on school committee when we hired Jeff, but I was on the search committee. And that process is long, and the pool is small. And so in my opinion, after these last few years, challenging years, stability is really important to me and I believe for our district. So one, if Jeff wants to stay, thank you. Two, this is important for us, and I also think that, it's just, we really need the stability. Next year, there are 2 seats that people are going to vote for. We don't know what we're doing yet, Jess, but anything can happen. So I think if we can put the district in a solid, in a solid state, then that's our responsibility. So that's where it stands. So thank you for wanting to stay.
Right. And I honestly think that if we were to have a candidate search right now and Dr. Marsden were to present himself to us, we would feel like that was essentially that we had struck gold. I mean, I really do think that within.
I agree with Anna Mae in terms of the stability and the extreme gratitude that it sounds hypocritical since this is my last meeting, but that you would like to stay because you're a much stronger leader than I am, and have been unwavering, I think, in just not falling down. You just keep plowing ahead and have been an incredibly strong and determined leader. And we, like Anna Mae says, are so lucky that you want to stay. And I think that the contract is extremely fair in terms of being really in line with exactly what the teachers' compensation looks like in terms of longevity. So I have no concerns or questions regarding any of that. And just again, want to reiterate that we're very lucky to have you. And to have had you through this last couple of years. When I moved here, you were not the superintendent, and through the 10 years that I have lived here, I have seen a lot of changes that you've brought to the school, And I know that there are still more things that you want to do, so I look forward, as Nat says, to the work that lies ahead. Well, shout out to Nat Bond.
Thank you. And I would just share, I mean, my comments, frequently my comments are more around process. I'm kind of a nerd on that. But, you know, high level, I just kind of, where I looked at it was, you know, my support of Jeff and the work that, you know, has been done, and absolutely you know, some kind of line of sight into the work that's in front of us. And I know there's a lot of large boulders that we're gonna have to kind of navigate around or and work with. You know, then I thought about, you know, Jeff, just hearing a little bit about what level of, you know, what motivates you, and you know, why might you want to continue, and what types of things you want to do, which we've talked about. You know, and that's where we started. And I said, hey, I like this idea. It was back in January, the early stages. I reinforced, I think, stability of the district, and what I think about is the leadership team underneath you, and it's going to continue to be hard, I think, to hire and retain teachers and principals and everybody else. I keep hearing about the big quit. I think we're suffering through that now. I think having that stability is really important for us. It allows us to do the things we really want to do. You know, then it was reviewing the contract, reviewing other neighboring districts, thinking through pros and cons, revisiting is there mutual appetite, right? Which we heard, and you know, and then just thinking about the pros and cons. What bad things happen if we do this sooner? What bad things happen if we don't? And then, you know, I think that's kind of how I've gone. You know, my brain. I've been very comfortable, and thank you to Jess and Leo for getting. As I asked some questions, you really gave me, you know, great information. Gave the committee great information.
Right, in the research on the comps.
Yeah, it's, I sort of said to Jess
Comprehensive.
a little while ago, I said, hey, I'm not quite sure I have all that. And then we had, you know, all the information I had. As I asked questions, I mean, thank you again to both of you. You've been so thorough. So all my questions have been answered. I think, yes, I feel really comfortable. And so, you know, I'm comfortable with the terms, and I know we haven't voted on them. We have to take public input.
And we also,
And we have to
Leo.
hear from Leo.
yeah, do you want to add in anywhere here? Are you done? Tim?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, and I think it was important to share about it.
No, actually, I would love to add a little bit here, because honestly, the reality of a good school district is reliant on stability and consistency of leadership. And I have witnessed in my career numerous situations where people are not, I mean, districts that are not actually valuing that particular aspect. And one of the things I've seen consistently through Dr. Marsden's tenure is that he continues to lead these changes through, you know, even though he's been there a long time, he continues to evolve the actual fabric of what we're doing. And case in point, right, the middle school, like, he has bridged between what is actually state of still maintaining the continuous approach of progress and allowing parents to understand what that means, right? And so, yeah, the fairness-based teaching is very advanced. And we understand it as parents, but he's bridged that gap, and that is actually extremely. It's hard. It's hard. He's got these teachers who invested a ton of time and professional development in producing a standards-based grading program. And he's got a parent group like us who don't understand it 100%. Is bridging that gap. And I think that is a sign of true leadership. In order to make that happen, we are really lucky to have that kind of disposal in our district. I cannot stress more the importance of consistency of leadership in a school district. Whether like it or not, right? They know it's a consistent, and they know there's a path forward to achieving their goal. And for that point, I am going to support Jess Riley's development of this particular contract extension.
Thanks, Leo. Okay, so lacking any other comments or anything that maybe you want to say right now? You don't have to. Okay. Why don't we call for public input? Do I have anyone who would like to approach the mic? All right. Come on up.
Thank
And
you.
we have 3 minutes.
Chris McHugh Potts. So I have basically 7 or 8 points I'm gonna make. I think it's very unfortunate that you've come to this decision, especially when Mass General Law places a legal limit on superintendent contracts of 6 years. Your own school committee member, Leo Brem, when this extension was granted in 2019, 2 years early, expressed to me and others that he was against that extension at the time because of the legal limit. Now, this is actually essentially going far beyond this based on what happened last time. We have a superintendent who because of his responsibility, I believe at the very beginning in the fall of 2018, was not held accountable by the school committee by not holding the listening sessions. Jess Riley, you were there. Anna Mae, you were there. Tim Bonifati and Chris Morrison specifically asked him to hold those listening sessions long before the feasibility study began, and that didn't happen. That was a huge misstep. There have been cases of a superintendent actually saying to a school committee member after he was elected, which teacher would you like to have for your child? He can have anyone that he wants. There have been complaints about the district, serious complaints at the federal, state, and local level, unlike I have ever seen in my entire time here with kids in the district. The superintendent pool right now for districts looking for superintendents is not small. That is a false narrative. You look at anyone who's doing searches, there are plenty of applicants for those positions. I have seen instances of the superintendent going behind school committee members' backs. There have been forms that have been signed that have not been duly notarized by you, duly approved. Teacher retention wouldn't be such a problem if we didn't have such a toxic culture because of the bullying that has happened from the top. And I have brought this to the attention over the last 8 years since I experienced it myself. And you heard it on your own when the superintendent of schools calls parents trolls, calls me a loser to 3 parents who were sitting here at a school committee meeting. And you look at that and you wonder why bullying is a problem in the district. It's because it starts at the top and he's not being held accountable by our school committee. When I went to a coffee with 2 school committee members and I said, I'm very worried about this and the effect it's having on the kids, the response I got was, well, it's not as bad as the last superintendent. So, look the other way and do this. If you really care about the kids in this district, the problems start at the top. We have a leadership problem and it's all been clearly documented. This memo, Megan, is this yours from the warrant committee meeting that was left behind? Am I still on the budget committee? We haven't had a budget subcommittee. Just wondering, this was left behind in the public safety building after the warrant committee meeting. Why am I being left out of meetings? I don't want to make a public issue about this, but please stop making meetings without me. So has there been a budget subcommittee meeting this year to talk about the reductions in the budget? You told me that there hasn't been. So how can you have a superintendent? It's your budget. This is a school committee budget. And there have been.
Madam Chair, how many minutes left?
No, I said, thank you very much. You no longer have the floor.
This is bad for our kids, I'm telling you. And our teachers.
I did not give her anything. She's referring to.
Yeah.
She, Ms. McHugh-Potts, just to clarify, Ms. McHugh-Potts says that there is a memo that you left behind at the Public Safety Building that you
Was
wrote comments about this that I don't know how
Madam
she
Chair.
got it or,
Madam Chair,
But-
point of order, like, we're not responding to this,
no,
We're
I'm
not
not.
arbitrary, like,
clarifying it.
garbage anymore. No, we're done with this.
Okay, so we've had public comment. I actually, in general, we don't.
No, we're not
No,
I
no,
wouldn't do
We're
that.
not,
I wanna-
we're not responding to
I'm
the
not
garbage.
responding. I do want to clarify. I do want to get clarity, though, that our extension is within the legal law. I think that's, I think it's.
There's a, Tim, that we could spend time on each one of those points.
I'm not, yeah, I have no. I think
Yeah,
the only-
Tim, we're not,
Not
we're not responding, Tim. We're not
even
responding.
worth our time.
No, it's okay. Public comment is public comment and like.
That's right.
we do-
It's
we don't
only comment.
Necessarily.
It's always going to be her comment. And that's
Okay,
why we're not
So
responding.
I think, also point of honor, or order, Leo, I think we will bring it to a vote now. So do I hear a motion to amend Superintendent Jeffrey Marsden's employment contract with the Medfield School Committee as presented? So extension through 2027. And with the same compensation terms, including beginning on July 1st, 2022, a longevity bonus through the end of his contract.
So moved.
Anime so moved.
Second.
Leo? Second. Leo seconds. I think that we could take a roll call for this. So
Mayor Schaefer, yes.
yes, Anime O'Shea Brooke, yes. And Megan?
Megan Glenn, yes.
Megan Glenn, yes.
Tim Knight, yes.
Tim Knight, yes.
Neil Graham,
And
yes.
Theo Graham, yes. And Jessica Riley, yes. So the motion passes unanimously. Thank all of you for the amount of consideration that you have put into this, because I know that it was not without consideration. And thank you so much for being open to continuing within our district.
You know, I appreciate the support from all of you. I know it's important to keep us moving forward, and we have a great team assembled here, so looking forward to getting more things done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank you, Jeff.
thank you, Leo. All right, so the next order of business is actually something that I'm pleased to be able to kind of discuss and take off your plate. And this is designation of the records officer for the district.
Right. So
Yes.
So a couple
You'd like
years
to talk
ago,
about that?
you guys voted for me to be the designated records access officer for the district as required. So Mike and I have talked a little bit about this and looking at some of the roles, because he's the assistant person and I'm the lead person, whether or not we would switch that so that he would become the records access officer, the RAO, and then I would be an assistant role to that.
Mhm.
So he's, certainly ready to do that. We still have a conversation before anything goes out, but he becomes a lead person, so we would just change that.
It's
like,
a
for instance-
significant amount of work.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
Michael would take the lead, I would be the assistant to help out, and he would be the contact person.
Anybody have questions regarding that? I know that we're kind of constantly trying to take
I do.
some of.
Sorry, Jeff, what does it
Oh,
cost
okay.
approximately for, like, if Michael has to do an investigation into a public request, what do we pay Michael an hour approximately to go in and dig up emails like that people want for a public records request?
It's just be like it is for me, just part of the work. We're salaried employees, so it just becomes part of the work.
Right, but I mean, we're taking you away
So
from
would
your
you
other day
charge-
job, right? Is it like, is it like $100 an hour essentially? Like,
So
like,
we
honestly.
can't charge any more than $25 an hour, and because we're under 20,000 residents, we can charge the first 2 hours. If we were above 20,000, we couldn't do that. That's the
Okay.
expectation is larger cities and towns have more staff. So yeah, $25 would be what we would charge per hour on those.
I mean, we pay you way more than that though, right? So if someone puts on a records request, like clearly, like I don't want to say wasting your time, but like we're pulling you away from other duties to actually do this work, correct?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I'm
So-
just curious. Thank you.
And again, it's the law of the land, and we don't have anything particularly to hide. It does become inconvenient, and it's been seen, but inconvenience doesn't mean that it doesn't get done. But if we can designate it to an employee who is,
In central office. that may
in
be
central
something.
office, then I'm perfectly in favor of
Well,
making the change.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially
yeah.
with the nature of the data privacy part of that, because obviously there's very sensitive
Mhm.
material that could be, could be communicated across that line, and it has to be censored. So therefore, it's a very important job. And at the same time, I feel like we need to let the public know just how much time is being spent on this. So I know it's not on the agenda today, but I think that we need to talk about posting every single OML complaint or FOIA complaint request to the public so that they know how much time is being spent on this and who's requesting those. So I feel like that this is something that we're going to have to do in the future, and I'm going to be put on a future agenda item to be voted in the future.
Okay, so I'll make a note that you would like that on the agenda in the future, and then we can have a discussion about what might be the best time to do that. I do think it should be in alignment with considering some of our policies on other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
As
separate.
well as the manual expense that it takes to do so, both legal and man hours of our current staff. So I think those need to be reflected publicly on a regular basis when they are requested.
All right, so moving past that particular discussion, which is more process at this point than the actual assignment. I have one quick question in terms of the vote, and then I will open this to public comment. When we put the vote forward, should we decide to do that after public comment, do I designate both the lead and the assistant, or just
Yeah,
the
sure.
lead?
You can do both. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I will open this up to public comment now. If anybody would like to approach. Hi. Okay. So do I hear a motion to designate Director of Finance and Operations, Michael LaFrancesca, as the lead records access officer for the Medfield Public Schools, with the assistant to be Dr. Jeffrey Marston, Superintendent of Schools?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, so moved by Megan. I'm gonna make you seconds all night tonight, Leo, because you've got a lag. So,
Fair
so
enough.
Megan,
Fair enough. I get it.
so Megan gets move, and Leo, are you seconding?
I'm seconding.
Okay.
It's your last
thank
night, Megan. You're not going to cut me off anymore after this. So
Oh. And do I hear all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Congratulations, Michael.
Leo, vote
congrats, Mike. It's a great honor.
aye. Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. All right, so the motion passes. It's unanimous. Dr. Morrison, at this point, do you have any other items since posting on March 22nd?
I don't. We do have a presentation, a quick one that will be part of informational items, so
Okay.
we'll wait for that.
Right.
If that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I do want to remind us that because it's under informational items, we can kind of comment, but it's really not a part of like the larger discussion. And it's also not really necessarily a part of the committee's responsibilities when we do get there. So But, you know. Okay, then we will move on to old business and DESI COVID guidance. Jeff, you want to kind of,
Sure. So we don't have any additional COVID guidance from DESI, although we have been in contact with them the last couple of weeks because we have seen a small uptake at Dale Street, only at Dale Street. And we've been, letting them know what's going on, asking for their support and guidance on that. And they've been helping us out along with our new town nurse, which is very helpful as well. So we're still keeping an eye on that. We're watching it. We sent letters home to parents in the classroom where there was COVID and also to the entire school yesterday. So we're just kind of keeping and giving folks, reminding them they have the option to wear a mask in certain classrooms that have multiple cases. No one's really taken advantage of that yet, but just want to make sure that people know they have that option to do that. So we're just keeping an eye on it. We had 10 positive pools on Tuesday that came up. We had a positive pool at Dale Street in 9 weeks with pool testing, and then we had 10. So just kind of keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
The rest of the schools are, similar, one every other day or something, or 1, 2 a day, but for some reason Dale Street has an uptick.
all right. Any public input on that?
And they just have sometimes you have a sense, is it in school or out of school or on
Kathy Thompson had talked to the families, and it looks like there was an event out of school that happened that could have been the start of it. It was a sports banquet kind of thing. So we just keep an eye on it. We just get concerned when there's multiple in the same classroom, which is why Kathy's been really proactive with getting the word out there to parents and sending those letters home. But we're still, keeping a close eye on it.
And the pool testing at Dale Street, is it continuing to have is it going down or is it still having the same level of?
So with the 10 we had was this week.
Yeah,
Yes,
so,
that
but, so the larger part of the population, I know that the high school is kind of plummeted.
Oh, you mean the number of participants?
Yeah, the
Oh,
number of participants.
Yeah, that's
sorry,
definitely
thank
gone down, yes. So we had, that's a really good point. So when we started it, I think we had 84% at Dale Street that were participating, and we're down to about half of that right now. So the numbers have gone down with participation. So I think it's one of those things we have to look at some point, how long we continue the pool testing. Many other districts have already ended it. But we think it's still kind of important to keep up maybe up until April vacation. And again, consulting with Kathy, consulting with our Board of Health, those kinds of things to get a sense of. But now this will uptick, and we saw an uptick statewide as well. So just going to keep a close eye on it.
Jeff, and that is in the conversations I'm having nationally that separates us from everybody else. And I want to not to put another feather in the cap of or pump up your ego anymore, but I think the fact that we continue pool testing with in the current state puts us on the forefront of everybody else, and so nobody else is doing that. And people are like, "Oh, you're still doing pool testing?" Absolutely. And I think that again, I have a the leadership and what Medfield represent and what we're doing today in the current environment. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. I mean, the other side of that coin is if you don't do the testing, you don't pick up those kids and they weren't really that sick to begin with, right? So I think that's kind of the other side of,
Yep.
why people are stopping it. So I can see both sides of it. I think right for now, we want to make sure we still are testing and finding out what we need to find out.
Yeah, it's really great. It's really good to stick your head in the hole and pretend it's not there. But the reality is that we're doing it, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, so lacking public input on that. Then we move on to fiscal year 23 budget update, and I will hand that off to Michael and Jeff.
So in your materials, you had a different number for the revised budget. We got an email late this afternoon from the warrant committee chair saying that they voted the numbers last night. And we had originally put in the 217,000 at the warrant committee meeting last week. In a reduction, thank you. And they have voted a $200,000 reduction in our budget, not the 217. So the new number, which I believe it's in my They
It's
got
in
it, right?
yours.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have,
so
they have.
it's in
Okay,
your
so this is
material,
the-
so it's this slide here.
Perfect.
So the revised budget number was 39,506,948. So the change in budget to FY '23 was 1,158,719, with an overall increase of 3.02%. So
were
that
you
was the
able
new
to
number.
Put that 0.2 math. We didn't have to put that into ESER.
So that stays in the operations.
So then really the only thing is the circuit breaker.
Right,
yeah.
so if you remember when we reduced it, it was relooking at our numbers and having an ability to save a little in circuit breaker and carry that over for next year, which allowed us to reduce the tuitions for FY '23 in that line item. So that's how we were able to do that. So the 2.2 positions still get added, which is important, and then all of the collective bargaining is all figured out in there as well. So the only change would be the decrease in the tuition line item. And we don't have to put that other position, that fraction of a position into ESER when we keep it in the operation.
So you're saying though, the $200,000 reduction, the whole simplifying, is, there's no reduction in service.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
We were able to use as we had been talking about at the last session.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember. We were able to take the $200,000 that we had to put in the operating budget and put it into the ESSER grant, realizing that that might be a bit of a risk for next year, but also realizing that those positions were so important within being able to stabilize, math curriculum, particularly at the elementary level, that we needed to make it happen one way or another, which is often the way it goes with budgets. And then we'll make it a priority to kind of keep those. And we also, every year started a zero budget. So, and kind of work from there. So if there are other positions that would be shifted around, if we continue to need less staff here, less staff there, or more over here, we can shift those numbers around in a way. So it's not like everything is written in stone and we have to pay for that particular thing forever. The numbers can be fluid over years in terms of need. So, do I have any other concerns?
Was it just a matter of the warrant committee crunching numbers differently, that their number came in lower for us?
Or they
I
just
think
like
the
they-
gods of
From
budget?
what Sharon said in the email, they didn't really want another position into ESER 3. So by putting another one in there, they thought it made more sense to keep in the operation budget. So
I mean,
it came at
I think we have a pretty
413.
positive relationship right now with the warrant committee, and it's taken, a lot of work and a lot of time to really try to establish those relationships and understand each other's priorities and try to align with them as much as we can. So we're all in the same boat here, folks.
Thank Ed for just the amount of work and
Right. Ed and
just kind of the
Steve,
translating that he
I
can
mean, all of them, but yeah.
bring, that was very, even for someone on the school committee, that was just very enlightening for him to explain all of that and the way like revolvers work. So, plug to the warrant committee.
Right in his wheelhouse.
It
Right.
really, yes.
Yes. So
What
to
he
the
does.
community, Ed Bazella, who was on the warrant committee, was also a district administrator in a different district for a very long time. And so is able to kind of speak some of the same Greek that school committees and school budgets speak, which is very different from municipal budgets, which is very different from corporate. So it's nice to have somebody who knows the language at the same time and is able to explain it in that same way.
Mhm.
So do I have any public input on the fiscal year 23 budget update at this point, or that number? Okay, approach the podium.
Chris Scott, 7 First Street. Just would like to reiterate, I think when when the school committee votes to form subcommittees, whether it is for budget or for anything else, that those
Point of order,
subcommittees.
Madam Chair, can you please make sure that this comment has to do with actually the subject at hand? Thank you.
It sounds like it does. Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you, Chris.
that that a budget subcommittee has the opportunity to actually meet, to talk with the superintendent, to talk with the finance director, and not have decisions made without that input. The budget belongs to the school committee. It does not belong to the superintendent. And to leave out our budget subcommittee on recommendations for reductions at any point in time in the budgeting process is just wrong. This is a disservice to our children.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, at this point, do I hear a motion to amend the Medfield School Committee's fiscal year 2023 school budget total to $39,506,948?
So move, Tim.
So move Tim. Okay, do I hear a second?
Second, Anna Mae.
Second, Anna Mae. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I,
Aye. Okay, great. So the motion passes unanimously and our budget will be $39,506,948 as a town contribution. But as Dr. Marston says, every year, we also receive a significant portion of our budget from grant and public sources as well.
Over 3 million.
Over 3 million. So thank you, warrant committee, and thank you all. And I think this is probably about the smoothest budget process I have seen. And I'm so done. I have seen in almost 4 years. So, all right. Elementary school project listening session on April 7th. So at our last meeting, we came up with a date of April 7th to hold a feedback and listening session, which is being posted as a public hearing, to talk about essentially what are our future expectations and future needs and wants from the committee for a new elementary school project. Because even though the project was voted down, it doesn't mean that the need goes away. And I think that pretty much the entire town, to the extent I've heard, realizes no matter what area you come from, in terms of your opinion, that it needs to happen and that the Dale Street building needs to be a better educational facility. Given that, and that we have, we offered up our April 7th meeting to kind of grease the wheels to get both the selectmen and us into the same room to do a feedback session. We decided that we would move our next meeting to the 14th, which would also be the first meeting of whomever is elected next week. So do I hear a motion to add a meeting on April 14th to conduct regular business of the school committee?
So moved, Anna Mae.
So moved, Anna Mae, and
second,
Leo, okay. And all in favor?
I,
Aye.
It's like, I'm out of here, wherever, meet whenever you want to. Tim, you're good? Aye?
Yeah, I guess it's not possible to meet like for an hour beforehand to cover some of the material.
I'm sorry,
With the regular, like if we met as a school committee before the listening session, just where my brain was going, like, is there any?
I think that we can
maybe you
never
target
quite
like the
predict.
28th,
It would
so-
also be the first meeting that we have our new school committee members in.
I think it would
And
be
I
important
they-
to,
Meeting before, Leo, I'm talking on. They probably deserve an entire
a
regular business meeting in which we can really go over. Sorry, I called him, I call everybody hun when I can't.
that's fine, I'll take it.
All right, apologize to Tiny. So.
She doesn't call me.
Okay, something thought for, good
Yeah.
enough. So yes, aye. So
Yeah,
it's-
aye, okay.
I should have asked that.
All right,
question.
I'm going to, so the motion passes unanimously, and we will meet on April 14th with
Yeah,
our.
I
new
only ask
administration.
that if Jeff and Michael can come with the prospective proposals for portable classrooms off of the Dale Street building to, get us through this process. Because right now we have a space deficiency to meet our special education needs, in the building, and that we need to make sure that we have those costs in mind to make sure that we can actually. Yep.
Leo, I think I know what you're talking, I know
It's-
what you're
it's
talking
hard
about,
for us
because
to
I
get
know that this is a point that you find, and we've discussed, it's quite important to you, which is that when we
course.
talk
And I
about the
think we need
elementary
to have
school,
those
we want to make
costs.
sure, we
We
want to
need to
make
have those
sure
costs
that we're
in
taking
because
into
we can't,
account.
we can't wait for the town to act anymore in order to meet the needs of our learners right now. So the reality is that we need to make sure we have a stopgap in place as a, while we're talking about a new building. Because we can talk about a new building until we're blue in the face, but the reality is that this town is not equipped to pay for a new building of $80 million or $50 million. At that point. So we really need to make sure that we can actually, provide the space that's needed to conduct education as we need it. And that's what we are charged with as a committee board.
I think that, I appreciate your point. I think that these
So
are
that is the point.
things that we'll continue to talk about. I think
No.
that the listening session
No,
itself
this,
is really
that is the
about
point,
allowing
Jess.
people to express themselves. So, yes, I
I
totally agree,
understand.
and you'd like to bring that.
we
Why don't
need,
you
we need
and
to-
Jeff connect about that?
Leo, can we connect about that? Because I couldn't hear a
We're
lot of
both
what you
having a
said.
hard time hearing, you're fading in and out on that. So
I
I want to make sure
apologize.
that your
Yep.
point is, I'll explain, it's, it's the technology, but
So, so if I just want to make sure, because I was going to stop anyways. The high level, the agenda for the listening session is there any
essentially
content? Because I
future.
think that's what he was saying, high level, it is more about gathering input without content. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there are some specific bullet points that, the selectmen and Gus and I have are talking about, or that we've talked about here, about looking forward, about kind of thinking about what the town is gathering information about what the town is open to considering, right? If we are, and really understanding about what the thoughts are on process and how that goes. So it's really about listening and not constructing anything in this particular, but it's about listening and thinking forward. How do we do what we need to do? And do it in a way that helps our children as quickly as possible in a lot of ways, but also constructs a building that is not simply throwing money at and bubblegum at a problem that's a longer term problem. So I think those are kind of the conversations in general. And I do expect to meet with Gus next week to talk some of those out in terms of constructing that.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, because I remember that last select board meeting.
Mhm.
To a certain degree, if it's a listening session, I can check the notes that I took that Gus described it. That makes a lot of sense. So I would just say if you construct an agenda, I think personally, I would like to have a school, as soon as we can.
Mhm.
I understand. I think Leo's concerned about continuing to manage while we figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think, going into that to listen without content or preconceived notions or anything is really, to me, that makes for a listening session to go in there and say, hey,
Yeah.
I think it should be a blue school.
Yeah, so look, I'm all for everyone picking the color of the school, but the reality is we have space needs right now, and so we can't wait for a new school. We need a stopgap right this second. There are space needs at the Dale Street School, and we have a kindergarten class that's now published over 200. right? So we have space needs across the board, and we need to address them.
Leah, we're drifting off of the agenda.
No,
And I'd like
that's
to be able to-
not the,
Hey, Madam
Jess,
Chair, I would-
in all due respect, this is a part of the agenda.
Fair to ask about what the agenda is and what we're going to talk about, or is it not?
No.
Yeah,
Say-
this is about what we're gonna talk about at this session. So this is actually a very important session. This is not just about a new building. This is about how we're gonna address the needs of our schools right now. We chose we chose as a town to forgo a new building. We did that. We voted, everyone voted, and we chose that we're not gonna build a new building. So in the meantime, we have 6 years to figure that out while we figure out a new building and everything else. But in the meantime, we have a space crunch right now, and we need to address that need immediately. And we'll let
Right,
the
but that is
town,
not-
as-
But Leo,
time out. As
Leo,
a school committee, we
Leo,
need to address the
Enough.
immediate needs and not the future needs of whatever the building they want to
understand that.
build. Yeah.
That's not something that we're going to be able to discuss or fund right now in this meeting on this agenda. If we're talking about listening and a feedback session, then I think that we need to go into that honestly and to take
Exactly.
feedback and listening.
And
But it
and
is
let's be
not about
honest,
whether
and
we
let's
build
be
monuments
honest.
right now.
no, Jess, let's be honest about what our needs really are. Our needs really is we need space now. We don't need space 6 years from now. That'd be great. Then we'll have, we'll build a $90 million building when we can finally push it through. That's great. But the reality is we need space now.
And
And
that's
we
fine.
don't
That
have
has
the space.
nothing to do with this agenda.
Great.
And so I would like to call a point of order that I need to stop this discussion if we're going to continue to go off.
Oh, well, I'm glad
direction
we
right
stopped the discussion at some point.
And
the
I'm
clarifying
happy
point,
to
though.
This
discuss
was,
the meeting.
this was my discussion and not somebody else in the audience.
No,
I
I
think what I'm
understand that,
hearing
but I
is- What
still.
Leo's point is, if that's part of the
I'm not
listening, great,
Misunderstanding.
right?
Leo's
No, but
point.
that's not the agenda.
that's-
That's not what we agreed with the select board, to say, we're gonna have a meeting to talk about our current needs. That was not the expectation we
Correct.
set. We're gonna talk about the meeting.
We're
you
going
know,
to
we're
talk
gonna
about a meeting. and have a
listen, we are
listening
gonna listen without going in with that.
Right.
That specific agenda, Leo, that's the only area that I don't think when we left the select board, that's what we agreed to. We can put that on our
So
own
let's
agenda.
talk about a new building. That's 100% fine. They can talk about a new building all day long, and they can talk about Hospital Hill. But the reality is that the select board does not have a track record of getting anything done at all. So we have an immediate need of space in our schools, and that requires immediate capital spending on portable classrooms on our schools. Period. If we're going to continue to have band and music in our schools at Dale Street and other schools and have this extended programming, then we need space to do it. Because right
All
now,
right,
it's
I'm going to put this on the April 14th.
no, it's
agenda.
happening.
Yes, I am. You're out of
Cafeteria.
order. Stop.
I know you feel you can stop me because I'm on the school committee, but that's okay. But the reality is we need to have serious conversation about expanding the space as our class sizes continue to balloon because we do not have classrooms to put people in. We're going to have to put preschool in another place at Memorial next year if we have a 200 student kindergarten coming in. And we need to
Leo,
address
so what I'm hearing are a lot of what ifs, and we need to deal with the specific data. So what I'm doing now is putting this issue on the April 14th agenda so that we can come in with the specific data around our needs when we are talking about space now. I
But
do
that is
want to
why it
make
needs to
sure
be a
that,
separate conversation. It needs to be a separate conversation from the
yes,
new.
that's what I'm saying, Leo. It needs to be, I think we are all completely in agreement that it needs to be a separate conversation. Not right now, and it needs to be on the agenda so that we can have a full, data-rich and discussion that is something that we can all participate in, that we're all ready to participate in, and we are able to understand and think about solutions for the space right now. But we can't do that right now. Right now, We are talking about how do we approach a listening and feedback session with the town looking forward? Because yes, you're right, we need space, but we're not, you're talking about an immediate short-term step, which is needed, but we are looking at understanding how we then also bring forward long-term goals. And that is
So
what
one of
the
the-
feedback and listening session is about. So I'm going
Yeah,
to
so one of the
end this
issues,
discussion
one of
right
the
now.
issues that we need to discuss is a global feasibility study for the entire district, right? So
Okay,
it's not
we're
just Dale
so
Street.
far off the ranch, I don't even know where to go right now. April 14th, we will have a conversation about this, I promise. None of us are ignoring it, none of us are ignoring the need. But we can't have a productive conversation about this unless we have data and specifics in front of us about the short term, okay? Because when you say that there's gonna be a 200 kid kindergarten class coming in, or, you're right, Dale Street is a mess. We've known that for years in terms of the space. But right now, what you're talking about is short-term needs that we can discuss April 14th in a very rich way with the people who will be with us for the next 3 years, whoever that happens to be. But for right now, we're talking about a feedback session about.
Fair enough, fair
However
enough,
that
but
goes.
our short-term
Okay,
needs are actually
thank you.
half a decade, just so you know.
What?
Our short-term needs we're talking about is a half a decade, right? Because
Yes.
we're not building a new
Right.
building in 5 years,
Not
so
misunderstand
therefore,
any part of
5
this.
years is a half a decade.
Got
And
it.
so our short-term needs are really right now needs. So
Gotcha.
as much as
And that's
we
what
want
I'm
to talk
saying.
about a new building,
All
it is
right.
clear that
April
our
14th.
district is not ready for new building.
Mr. Brown, you no longer have the floor. Please stop. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm just reviewing the notes. This is what we agreed. It was, what inputs should the school committee, SBC, and select board consider as they kick off the process? That was the agenda that we discussed. That is definitely what Leo, that couldn't, very well could come up as an input where we, but that's not on the agenda.
That's not on the
It's-
agenda,
it's to
and
listen
I
to
am
people.
willing, and I think, these are discussions that we've had. And we've started them, and we've talked about at the capital, like what our capital needs are, what we need to do with modulars, what we need to do to kind of get Dale Street through. Bye, guys. I hope you heard the controversy you needed to. We did that just for you. Excellent. Sorry, Leo, we had a couple of scouts who needed to come and hear a public debate. And I don't know who
Oh, I hope
dropped.
I got it, because I'm not done.
Yeah, I do not know who dropped the hint to you, but you did it great. Okay, so.
I think, the only other one, if we're talking about staying
So
on
we will
April
address this,
14th,
okay?
it might be
Can we
worthwhile.
put a new building again? Be great.
Hold on,
That'd be
Leo,
great.
Leo, 1 second. Just 1 second.
I don't have a mute button, Leo.
I think it would be
Thank God.
worthwhile, if you are talking about, current state, remember, maybe an update on what we could talk about the costs that we can
Yeah.
expect. That I think that would be worthwhile to be given a more complete picture.
So
So
Leo,
then-
why don't you and I and Dr. Marsden get together and really construct what that agenda item would look like and what we need to hear in order to.
No, I think the listening session is perfect just the way it is. Let's have a good listening session about what we need
That's
from
what
the
I'm
town.
saying.
I don't think we need to have another meeting about it at all. So 100%. I'm open to hear the community's feedback about how they feel the space concerns are currently and how the selectmen are going to address that. And that's on the selectmen. Period.
Okay, all right. So we will still continue to construct the agenda for April 14th and
Yeah, I think that would like.
so, thankfully, we did vote that. So, we did vote that, right? I wrote it down. Did we get to the I part? Yes. So Leo was, okay. We're gonna have to roll tape on that one, but I believe that we did indeed vote the motion. Did we vote it? Okay. Thank you. You're going through the,
We did.
all right. I mean, we joke, we get along. get along very well. We joke. We
So
take
did
each
that all
other.
happen when I started asking about if we could have a regular meeting before?
Yes, it is completely your fault, Mr. Knight.
That time and-
It's okay.
Meanwhile, going over basketball is going on right now.
All right, well, I could wrap up if we stop talking. Okay, anyway, let's move on a little bit. So the next item up is donations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask for your approval of the following donations: $1,206 to Young Audiences of Massachusetts for the upcoming program Eyewitness to the Revolution at the Wheelock School, and $180 to the Memorial Gift Account from Memorial PTO to apply to bus transportation costs for kindergarten and first grade field trips. That's what you approve as presented.
So do I hear a motion to approve those, to accept those donations as presented?
So, second,
Okay, so Anna Mae and Megan and all in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye. Leo? Okay. Leo? All right. So, the next thing on the agenda, as we're kind of coming forth here, is informational items. And I know that Dr. Marston and Dr. Power wanted to do a presentation on something that has been kind of floating around on all sorts of different social media platforms and really making people enormously concerned that, you know, the ship is sinking or not, or so we thought that we would really, or that they thought that they would really dig into what the data truly is and does show. So I will, in terms of rankings for the schools. So I thought I would just hand it over to you.
Sure, thank you. So
Thanks.
Christine has done a great job with this research analysis on looking at the high school rankings over the years. I think one of the things that, you know, we've heard with emails is that maybe there's some misinformation in terms of what Boston Magazine looks like and what US News looks like and their methodology around that and what the actual numbers are. And you know, I think you folks have gotten emails around various numbers that, you know, in September, we were shocked about Boston Magazine. Well, as you'll see, that Boston Magazine has always, it's been up and down. And I know it was 37 the day I walked in here. So I understand that people were concerned about it, but there's a long history of not doing. When I first got in here, I was told by Mike Sullivan and others that the reason why we didn't score well in Boston Magazine is because our per pupil was so low. Because that, I think, was an indicator back then. I don't think it is one anymore. But
Cost per pupil or student teaching?
our per pupil expenditure per student in the
Oh,
budget was so low. We were below the state average for a long, long time, and that was one of the metrics that they used to measure. So Christine went through all the way back to 2010, I think, looking at some of that information. I think one of the little nuggets that's really interesting is that the last time Medfield was #1 was 1998. Chris Martis had told us about that when he was doing some interims, and they were #1 in MCAS at that point. So it's been a while, and that was when MCAS first came out, and Christine was teaching at the high school at that point, and she remembers the real estate agents dropping off bagels and food for them, thanking them because they were then, true story, because they were all making a lot of money at that point because they were selling so many homes in Medfield. So, I mean, I think this is just really the facts. It's the data and the facts. It's not conflating US News and Boston Magazine and you know, MCAS and this and that. It's pretty clear what we're doing. Here. So,
Highly respected educational organizations that don't have any need to sell magazines through their consistent rankings.
yeah, but I think it's, you know, it's one of those things that it's,
And people take it because it's,
you know, if we're #1, we'd have a parade about it. So I think we can't poo-poo it so much, but we just need to
I
understand
might
like
go
what
for it
it's,
just on principle.
but what it's all about and
Right.
what it really is, and some practices that we do that other districts don't, that don't set us up for this, and how you can almost game the system if you want to in some of these rankings, which we've chosen not to do. So Take it away, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. Thank you. First of all, as was said on the outset, that there's no established ranking system in Massachusetts. So in the absence come a number of periodicals, and there's a number of them that do that. Boston Magazine, US News, but there's also something called Niche.
Niche, yeah.
Niche.com in grade schools.
Mhm.
So there's a whole bunch of them out of there. And again, that's in the absence of any solid established, recognized ranking system. So I'm only picking two to talk about, but just keep in mind that when I'm about to talk about the different facets really apply to any one of these in terms of the variability. And so I'll be walking through a number of these tonight. So I have a couple different points, and this will come through in the data I'm sharing. But I really want to start the groundwork saying that ranking systems are not the same. They really vary from list to list. And just taking to Boston Magazine and US News, I'm about to walk through the criteria on each one, and you'll see how vastly different they are in many different ways. The second point is a really key one. I'd really like you to think about that as we go on, is that the methodology does change within the same ranking from year to year. And Jeff alluded to that before in terms of sometimes for people spending is something on one year, but not on the other. You're going to see examples where you take the same scale, whether it's Boston Magazine or US News, and you're going to see variability in that within a single year. And some of that is simply because they changed the measurement on how things are measured, whether it's the weighting and how heavy they weigh certain things or others, or sometimes it's things like the way something like Boston Magazine, they'll do per pupil spending, which they don't do anymore. When they first started, they did the number of sports teams and the number of clubs being offered. It's not on the present list, as well as things like the number of college advisors was a couple of years ago. This changes from year to year, so keep in mind that the year-to-year connection is not as streamlined as you would think. The third thing is population differences, and keep in mind that different scales have different populations. Example with the US News and World Report is the entire state versus Boston Magazine is within 495. You have other things to keep in mind, the inclusion of charter schools and the inclusion of exam schools such as Boston Latin show up quite a bit. So I'm going to break this down and talk about two specific scales, and the first one's the Boston Magazine scales. So how do they have their ranking? Well, this is as of this year. Keep in mind this does change. But they use a number of different data sources, including AP, MCAS, SATs, graduation rates, percent attending college, eval scores, and class size and student teaching ratio. Their weighting is a little bit nebulous. They really don't go into details in terms of what they weigh and how heavily any of these are weighed. But how they do this and how they measure is that they take a particular data point, for instance, AP, and they compare across 150 school systems. And at that point, they apply their weighting, but we don't know what the weighting is. So we don't know how, for instance, important SAT scores are versus how important the eval scores are. There are other factors too. This doesn't contain charter schools, and it only is a smaller group of schools within 495. US News, a little bit more different and definitely more involved. They have several slides on that, but keep in mind, fewer data sources, just the AP, MCAS, and graduation rates. And that's because the US News is a subset of a large national ranking. This is a very involved scale. I'm not going to go into it other than say that they are very, very, very transparent on how they weigh everything from college readiness and how they determine it. And that is weighted heavily on not only the number of AP offerings and AP scores that are taken, but also how many people take it and how if they take multiple APs, for instance. So there's just layers of that. MCAS does weigh in, and also something, for instance, the underserved student performance scale, which is the performance of students of color and low-income students on MCAS. The graduation rates on there as well.
Christine, I would add too that on those weightings, they look at the scores of a 3+, right? 3, 4, 5.
That's right, very specific,
On
yes.
both of those, so that that 3, 4, 5 on AP is a big part of the scoring. 75% at least on,
Absolutely, it's weighted more heavily
Yeah.
for those who have those,
which is going to tie into our last slide.
absolutely. other factors that this does contain charter schools, and it's also districts across the state. So here's where the rankings come in. I got to dig into my Boston Magazine .com, my subscription, and went back all the way to 2010. This is as far back I can go. And you will see the rankings for Medfield High School over time. And you'll see a lot of the variability there. I really want to point your attention to a couple of things. First of all, way back in 2010, we were 31st, and guess what? This 2021, 31st again. Also, it's really interesting to see 2013, we were 37th, and 2014 all the way up to 11th. Again, a lot of things could explain that, but that's a single year, and that's a big difference and big shift. And a couple of things, change of the scale of and other factors. But interesting to see all that. Now I took these data and I plotted it. And you can see that more visually on this. And I know I told you, and I just said that it would be really problematic to compare from year to year because of the shifting indicators on how to measure that. But I couldn't help myself when I did it. And I created a trend line, actually. And you'll notice the trend over time. If you do take the data points, you look at it and you'll see that it's actually relatively stable over time. US News ranking, only can go back to 2012 on that one. Again, you'll see a lot of variability. You see that 52nd, very interesting. Following year, number 4, huge. I can also tell you that the difference between the scales are really interesting. In some districts, it's something like 30, 40, 50 points difference in their scale between in the same year between US News ranking and the Boston Magazine ranking. So there's not exactly a correlation between those. It's just, again, it's the individual magazine and what they choose to look at. So again, you'll see that the highest we've been was in 2016, 4th, lowest 2015, the year before, 52nd.
So I'm gonna just, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Because you called it out a minute ago, but it is kind of interesting. If you compare 13 to 14 in Boston, it goes from 37 to 11.
Sure.
And US News, it goes from 13 to 8.
Yeah.
But then what's interesting is then 14 to 15, US News goes 8 to 52. And you're saying in Boston, it goes from 11 to 12.
Yeah.
So those are different, totally different areas, but.
Totally different scales, but if you sort of take it back and say, okay, what about the quality between those two? You'll see that there's just huge variability anyway. Again, and that just goes to the inexact science behind this.
And then you're going to show it again, I think.
Oh, which one?
Maybe, no, just the red line.
Oh, yeah, the
So
trend
that
line,
is-
have to do the trend line. And again, doing the trend line, you'll see that. If you plot everything, the nice little plotting here, you'll show the variability, and then you do the actual trend, and there you go. It's relatively stable. This is the key slide. So I just explained in terms of the scores and how they are all over the place. It is important, though, the takeaway from this is to really look at what are the levers involved and how does that, and we look at that to use to improve instruction and improve the quality of schools. And notice it says ongoing steps. These are different forms of data that we look at all the time. And there are just different ways that we look at to see what is the story, what are we hearing within these different forms of data, and what can we learn from that. So these are just a few. There are many more squares. I just did this for clarity, but some of the big ones are MCAS and SAT scores, looking at those, looking at our data systems in terms of how they're reported. And then, of course, AP. And you'll notice I broke out AP because that's just a good example of something that we do when we look at our scores in general and the different pieces involved. So keep in mind that AP scores, APs are offered in schools all across, but there's a lot of differences on how they are offered, when they're offered, and the protocols about offering them. So example is timing. APs can be offered as sometimes 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. I can tell you as a person who taught in this building, taught AP Euro for years, that A junior versus a senior taking an AP could be very different in terms of the experience. That it's just in terms of whether or not that the grades, for instance, the AP will apply whether or not to go to college or not. So that's just one factor to think about. The other thing is the requirements. Are the AP exams required for all students at the conclusion of the course to take that? There are many schools that do not require, but some who do, including ours. And whether or not, keep in mind timing on whether or not there's buy-in, you're a senior about to graduate. How much are you going to focus on your AP exam? Well, you have to take it, but you may not focus on that if it doesn't count in your college. So that's another thing to
And there's
think
an
about.
added cost to those tests as well.
I'm sorry?
Added cost to those tests as well.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
there's an
not.
equity issue there. It kind of comes back to how much does it cost to go to Medfield High School and Medfield schools, which is something that we had been looking at kind of before the pandemic hit. Right? That there's what I call parent tax.
Right.
You know, we receive our taxes in our allotment from the town, and we are grateful and glad to take it, but there is also an additional tax on parents and families to really have the full experience.
Absolutely.
The requirements, the perspective I would have is suppose a junior's not doing so well with that AP, and then the mandate that he or she has to take it adds to anxiety. Now, that's a conversation, a family conversation you may have that says, hey, you may or may not. But I think it is kind of an interesting something to look at.
Yeah, it's again, all these are pieces to look at.
So just the data around in 2021, we had 267 students take AP classes. They took 501 APs. Okay. Out of those 501 AP classes, 493 took the exam, or 98.4%. So only 8. It could have been one person doing multiple, but there were only 8 out of that did not take an exam. Now you look at the course of study in other districts, and it's optional. So I'm not saying that's what we have to do. I'm just saying it's something just to think about. It's something that I remember 2013 or 14 when College Board came to visit Medfield High School, because we had the highest percent of kids taking it and they scored the highest. So, I mean, I think we've talked about how you get different groups of classes that go through, and sometimes they perform better than others. It's not linear fashion. It really isn't. Education anyway, it's not. But so I think that's something we could look at in terms of our process and what our requirement would be for kids when they have to take them or not. I don't know the answer to it. I'm just saying, posing as a question, something to think about.
All of these are something to think about. And again, so that goes to the overall, these ranking levers, for the lack of better terms, that when a ranking comes out, it's always good to look at how is that determined, and then drilling down more deeply into specifically what are the levers, and then seeing what kind of story they tell. And that's something that we are doing now, and we've always done, and they're bringing up these points of conversation.
Just want to ask to clarify. I think I heard you say that part of the criteria when they're looking at APs are districts that may be able to teach or in AP to like a younger grade. Like for instance, the school that I used to teach at, they had AP-year-old freshmen could take human geography, sophomores or whatever. So there was, not that I totally agree that that's the way to go, but would that be something that greatly affects
Yeah,
the
and those are
number.
Conversations to have developmentally. Does it make
Yeah.
sense? Does this make sense in the sense of the scope of the curricula, right?
Right.
And the building of that. So these again are parts of
Yeah.
those conversations, definitely.
So we don't have any sophomores taking AP, right? Just
I think
juniors.
kids have taken them before, but on their own, right? Yeah,
Which is a different experience.
yes, because I mean, even with the whole challenge success and, these are conversations we have been having.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regarding
And we
APs and,
continue to have, but yes, absolutely.
so what's, one of the most fascinating podcasts I've ever listened to is Malcolm Gladwell's
Business
podcast
history.
on where college rankings came from.
Yes.
Right.
It is mind blowing. It is so fascinating.
It is
And so
such an
many-
equity issue, I can't even, it makes me want to spit when I was listening to it.
But I wonder, this Boston Magazine one, just looking at attending college, I wondered, do the kids who choose to take gap years, do not get reported.
Correct.
As-
Right.
Yeah, and I.
So we had 11% last year that
Mhm.
either took gap years or didn't go, or I forget what the other, it was 11% was a number, which was a lot higher than we normally have.
Yes,
It's typically like 6%.
but way back in the day, we did not promote it, we did not talk about it, and I'm so grateful that we now
Mhm.
add that to the mix of what we offer our kids, because gap years
Okay, great.
for some kids are just life changing.
And that's a great example of something that is life changing, but yet on these scales are seen more as a negative.
Yes,
Is teacher evaluation on Boston? That's on Boston too, right?
It is.
Yeah, so the amount of teachers that get an exemplary rating is on there as a,
And do you indeed want to be in a district in which you're just farming, exemplaries instead of really
Yeah, I mean,
looking at?
there's other metrics you can
Data.
use in that regard that I'm
Absolutely.
not sure that exemplary is the one to use, but.
I just,
so
yeah, the other side, I kind of just looking like. I go back to. What do other states, because you're saying, do some states have a agency that does the, as far as we know?
The competitive Boston Globe used to, this is what goes back
Yeah,
to
the
when
MCAS.
MCAS, that first year, 98, I remember that, we're like, woohoo, we're number one. They did it for a couple of years and then it stopped. And one of the reasons why it stopped, it created a really unhealthy atmosphere of seeing these schools as failing schools or, tremendous schools. And they just thought became really toxic. So the Globe actually stepped away from that they gave a numerical point system and it was very elaborate. And they stepped away from that. So there are, as far as I'm aware, there are states who they don't. They provide there's a lot of metrics on everyone's Department of Ed site. However, firm rankings tend to come from publications and things like that.
Yeah, because the other side was, I was just thinking is like, how do you compare academic performance versus student success? Right, and student success is, I mean, I think, that like you start looking at our mission statement.
That's right.
And I think that Christopher, part of that conversation last week as well. It becomes interesting where even as our own, when we want to evaluate, how do we look at both? I think is something that I'm interested in continuing to explore.
Well, what is the best school and who defines it? And what are the criteria? And is it the student success and all the other pieces?
Yeah, you have to look at, you have to look at both. It doesn't appear that, I mean, I did see in your slides, you had one metric that touched on it, but that was more like your special ed oriented. But I would think if your Boston Magazine tool would be like, whoever they are would be, hey, is there a formula out there?
But I think, the purpose of this today informationally is just to kind of clear up some of the confusion. It's not to say that we don't think this is important, because we do think it is, because there are districts that are always in the top 15, right? So I think we're looking at what we're doing. We're looking at some of the ways that we could maybe adjust our practice, but we're not going to, I guess what I'm saying is this isn't going to drive what we do every day, but we do think it's important.
Yeah.
We do think it's important. And we just wanted to really clear up some of the confusion that's gotten back to us either through emails or conversations we've had with folks in the community about being number one and now being number 31. Like that's.
And can you clarify some of the actual educational accreditation that we have gotten? I mean, I know
We just
had-
went through NEAS. We
That's
just
what I
went
said,
through that
yeah.
whole process,
So, which is exactly what does drive everything that we do every
Right.
day. And overwhelmingly, they found us to be, I'll use the word exemplary since you.
We had some combinations on that.
Yes, yes.
Christine, any either lessons learned or after you did this research, other, gee, I really like to do X, or, as you look at this, not so much with the publications, because we have a lot of our own data.
Absolutely. The conversations that this spurs is always a good one. I had this information, but to put it all in the same spreadsheet and seeing over time is just really helpful to look at where we, just where things are. Again, keeping with the grain of salt, but some of just the conversations, taking that 11% that we talked about, what we ended up doing was saying, hey, this is, we're normally around 6. Why is it 11? And what's the story behind that? And having folks around a table and having that conversation, that's the gem part. Because at that point, we have the people around the table who can tell the story behind the data. And so that's something that this is really valuable because it's a touching point, it's a talking point.
And that third bullet point is really critical too. I think Christine's had some really good conversation with the department chairs around the curricular changes that AP has overtaken the last few years. So making sure that what our kids are getting is in line with what AP is expecting and what they're being tested on. So having those conversations is really important.
Yeah.
So indeed, the rankings don't necessarily reflect the entire experience of the entire student body, because not every child takes AP. And so what, in essence, their rating are, what do the really, really exemplary students who are, how well are they doing, right? But
They
we're
they
not
have
talking
MCAS in there
about,
though. Everyone
Yeah.
takes MCAS. They have
but
that.
it's not weighed quite as heavily as a lot of these other things. And, you know, I think that there is also a point to be made there, that, you know, we're a district that is lucky enough to be able to have the resources to be really focused on education, and that there is a pressure to kind of get to the right college, get to the right thing, but there are kids on, you know, who are on the tails of the bell curve. And there's not a whole lot of information or emphasis in some of these things on those kids and how well they're doing. So speaking to Tim's full experience in the full child, how does that work? So. Okay,
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Thanks,
very
Christine.
much.
thank you. Appreciate your late night show. Thanks.
I love your charts.
Is there any future or, I'm sorry, other comments you'd like to make on that, or,
Just
please?
in terms of the informational items, I just want to remind everyone tomorrow is DLD in the district, and our team has worked real hard to put on a great professional development day tomorrow with many, many courses throughout the building. Last year, we had over 600 participants from around the country. Our folks and people around the country this year, because we're going back in person, we've scaled it back. So we have 75 folks from other districts coming in that are doing presentations, but we didn't open up the whole workshop. Thank you
Yeah, that's the best of us.
I know, to everyone yesterday. So for tomorrow. So I think that's where, you know, we're at, and looking forward to a great day tomorrow. There's a lot of good, really good classes that are going to be taking place. So.
I have one informational item that I think is incredibly important, in that I would like to, it's you. I'd like to wish you the best of luck, and I'd also like to congratulate you on your renewed social life.
To be seen.
Because this is
No one's
Megan's
speaking to
last,
me anymore.
right, this is to congratulate you on the opportunity to renew relationships after tonight, because this is her last school committee meeting. And I think that each of us has learned something from you. For me, it's your work ethic. I'm just gonna keep talking,
I'm
because,
sorry.
you know, this is what happens around here. No, for me, it's your work ethic, and it's also your ability to stick to your guns when you believe something is right. And I think that we will miss you, miss your real kind of dig in, hands-on.
It's our Tuesday morning conversations.
So thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else would like to contribute some informational items.
Yes, I know, it's just what I do, I'm sorry.
So cry. That'd be good.
No, but you know, it's just, you move to town and automatically you're running the winter carnival. I mean, that's just who you are. It's just like Tim, when he moved to town, you know, he's into, you know, stepping up. So that's just, I'm just so grateful to the types of people who have stepped up to school committee, because this is hard. It is not pleasant.
Some of it's pleasant,
The goal.
but you gotta work for the goal.
You do, but you know, it takes the kind of person, it's
It's
in
a
your
grind.
fabric to serve. So I just want to say thank you. And I'll miss you.
I'm still around,
I know, but
just not at the table.
no, but anyways, I remember you were a regular at the superintendent advisory committees, and then you ran the override, and I said, well, what about you? Here you were, so
Here
thank
I
you.
am.
And to reiterate Jess's points as well, your work ethic is impeccable. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you.
And so I hope to see
No, I just, massive,
And we're not talking about Tim.
yeah, no, massive thank you.
So-
I mean, it is, I agree. Megan has dug in. I guess, Megan,
Roast.
because I've looked, you are leaving a large folder
Oh.
of policy.
That all made it to you? I thought it might
That,
still
yes,
be downloading.
there's I mean, that's where you see that, some of that work ethic, though, sort of what you've done, and at least I think, just a great add to the team. and-
You've left us in a really good position. Thank
I
you.
do appreciate, I think, Dr. Marsden, I might say it a different way, and it wouldn't be as well, but yeah, when Megan sees something that, doesn't sound right or is a priority, whoever's, has the answer, she's gonna find out,
Dogged.
right? She's gonna, she will
Is
move in. I
that
think
is that a
that's,
positive?
no, it's,
Yes.
Yes.
All right, cool.
yeah, just, I think that's
So
good,
that's my husband.
I mean, so, yeah,
I'll write you a note.
Thank you.
yeah, so,
Wow.
absence of write-in for Megan. I've appreciated.
And you said you'd visit us on Tuesday morning, so.
I will
gonna hold you
visit,
to it.
yeah, no, I'm gonna still be here, guys, I'm just not gonna be here, but I thank you for those.
And,
for the-
yeah,
As
you-
we
you
have
get
said
say
to other
formally
members,
goodbye, I mean, I might.
You're going to a better place.
I'm going to
I may or may not.
Yeah, You'll be here as long as you want to be here. I thank you, and I think about how much the role of the school committee has evolved and changed over the last 3.5 years that I've been here. And when I decided that I would, yeah, sure, I'll fill in for Tim, and thought I knew what I was getting myself into. Which even on a regular school committee would be like, no, you have no idea, and then enter what happened. It's been one hell of a ride, guys. And I'm
We'll
getting off
probably
the
give you credit
carousel.
for two. Yeah, we'll give you credit
Yeah.
for 2 terms.
Thank you,
Right? Just
yeah.
one on
No,
top of
and
each other.
Honestly, looking back on it, I have learned so much, and it kind of lit up a part of my brain that had been, unlit for a while because, raising kids or being out of the workforce. And it was, it's unbelievable, and the fire hose analogy is totally applicable, like drinking from a fire hose at first, but I've learned so much from all of you and from almost all you guys. And met so many wonderful people and made so many relationships with people, and I would not hesitate, even, gosh, I can't believe I'm saying this, even knowing what I know now about what was coming, I would do this all again. So I'm leaving, not, just abruptly. And I feel like there's more that I need to do, so I need to step away from this. And it's been an unbelievably positive experience for me in terms of learning more about what I'm capable of, and looking forward to being able to go back and sit in the bleachers and not be ambushed or shunned.
You might have to wear a sign for a while, because people don't always get the memo right away.
Okay, so keep it real, Medfield.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Do I have any other informational?
Oh, I also need to relinquish my role on the Norfolk Sheriff's
All right.
I will,
adolescent.
we'll put it on the agenda.
And I just wanted to say that I do think it should probably be assigned to someone who's not entirely new, because there is a certain level of information you'll need to know about programs and things that are in place in our district. And maybe someone who has had a lot of experience in Medfield Cares about prevention or suicide awareness. I don't know, but so.
You're gonna give Anna Mae that twitch. We've got we will look at the equity of
Yep.
roles.
Okay, but that also has been a great.
Yeah, sometimes
Really
it's
cool.
those
Mhm.
committees that you end up on that you're like, I had no idea what this was going to be, but it really is
Yeah, for sure.
kind of net positive.
When's the next meeting?
That might be the dumbest question you've ever asked.
I know, sometimes.
Signed up for it.
Yeah, well,
We could skip a couple saying that we're
there's that in
rolling.
policy.
Reorg.
Exactly. We'll take that.
Yeah, do you want
900
policy?
pages.
Because I can send you.
What you guys don't
Just
know
take
is
the
that
whole
it's
thing.
all policy.
My closing remarks, whoever said fire hose, what's beyond fire hose? Because yeah, it was that first year or so,
Niagara
with
Falls,
fire
yeah.
hose, and then you're all, yeah, you were thrown into the falls of the pandemic.
Yeah. Or when Leo,
Is he gone?
I think he's gone. I think he might be driving back from wherever he is. But I do remember thinking last year when Leo ran, I was like, I didn't know for my second term that I was signing up for a pandemic. And so it, like I was in the midst of it and I was gonna do it and that was, but Leo knew. And he still did it. And I think that kind of speaks to the quality of the experience of being here and that it is like drinking from a fire hose. But it gives you a sense of gratification and of really, sometimes you really do find out exactly how tough you can be. Sometimes on alternate days. So.
Yeah.
Thank you again. It was a
Yeah.
very long-winded thank you.
No, thank you guys, and best of luck to you. I will be at the ribbon cutting ceremony for that new school sooner rather than later.
Amen.
Got a seat reserved for that there.
It's gonna be there.
No, not for the ribbon, no, I'm thinking for the April 14th.
Oh.
I'd just like to add just one more thing in terms of
Mhm.
informational items, and that is all the things that our kids are starting to do again, like the spelling bee, string fling, Vanderama, Annie. I'm just
A
so
lot of things that
excited.
we need to rebuild because there's been this 2-year gap where people didn't know that these were things that were such a tradition and kind of,
So
and it's a
it was
nice
just-
thing.
I was at the spelling bee today, and just to see kids running up to their friends, giving them a big hug with that, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was just really, it was really uplifting. So that's good stuff.
And student government and National Honor Society are stuffing Easter eggs as a fundraiser. I wanted to make sure I gave them a little bit of a plug. They can be nut-free or not full, but they're doing it and they're advertising it on Facebook if families want to get pre-stuffed eggs for their Easter egg hunts or whatever. So
Cool. And just, oh shoot, I did say one thing, but a plug for Medfield Coalition for Suicide Prevention. We're, we're kind of preparing for Mental Health Awareness Month in May, but we're starting some programming earlier. And on Monday, April 4th, we're having someone from META, which is a multi-service eating disorder association, speak about healthy eating versus disordered eating and how to identify it and how to get help. There is a crisis that we all are aware of. So I think this would be a great thing for people to, of all ages, to tune into.
it's a real kind of burgeoning crisis around essentially kind of body dysmorphia and overbuilding with young men, and has a lot to do with TikTok. And there's a lot of it's no longer this kind of story of like, oh, that's just something that happens with girls, or that's about restrictive, or that's that there are whole kind of realms that the joys of the internet we have all brought to our kids. So
April 4th.
April 4th, yeah, at the Blake Library.
Yeah, but actually, it is interesting when, and it's just one thing that share with you folks. Speaking of Boston Magazine, this month, there really was a fascinating article about youth sports and club sports, and how it just has taken over. But it's worth looking at. For those that are in there, it was, when I read it, I was just fascinated with some of the points they had. So if interesting read and not promoting. And promoting the article.
Okay, cool. Okay. Anything else? Okay. So we do have future agenda items, the Health Advisory Committee and MASC School Committee Roles and Responsibilities Workshop has been confirmed for May 19th. And school choice public hearing will also be on that day. And then we'll continue with the policy manual updates. And for the 14th, we tentatively can put on a short-term space issues if that is something that Leo continues to want to do.
I
For
think
that
that's a
day.
good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, and then the next meeting is the April 7th listening session.
Is that here, by the way?
No, it is at the Public Safety Building, and comments will be accepted both in person and on video.
Okay.
And then our next regular meeting, which will be April 14th, and then just want to say, nameplate is yours forever, but as your last official act, would you like to motion to adjourn?
I would like to remind everyone to vote
Hmm.
on Monday.
There are many town things,
for
a
me.
lot that are uncontested, but that still doesn't take away how serious or what a privilege it is to be able to vote and have your vote taken seriously and counted one for one, which is not a privilege that I think many countries, as we see, are able to do. Plus, now we have bubble voting, right? This is our inaugural new voting machines.
I guess so.
Thank you.
All right. So, okay.
Thank you,
motion
pandemic.
To adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Where's Leo?
Leo dropped off, so. So, all right, the meeting is adjourned at 8:55.